In a few seconds, we're going to start the priority setting process and the voting. Before we do this, everybody should have a Digivoting card. If people don't find a Digivoting card where they're seated, can they please move to a seat that has a Digivoting card or a table that has a Digivoting card? There are enough for everybody, so if you don't have one, please just go to another seat that has one. The other thing that you should have found on your chair is a folder, a CRP2 folder, and it has documents that you're going to be using for this voting. So please make sure that you have this folder. I don't have one to show you. Yeah, me neither. Yeah, if you can. Okay, so before we go into the 3 steps of Digivoting that we have, of priority setting, sorry, that I have described, we're going to go through a preliminary step. Okay, so this is the folder that we're going to be using, so please make sure you have one. Thanks, Barry. So we're going to do a preliminary step during which you will get acquainted with the Digivoting equipments, and you'll be able to ask questions about how this works. And also this step will enable us to acquire information about the people in this room and get to know you better. The way this is going to work is that we're going to ask you very simple questions about yourselves and your background, and you're going to answer to these questions using the Digivoting cards. These cards. And after the vote, we'll be able to see the results directly on this screen. Okay, so the first question is, and please do not press any key before I ask you to. The first question is, what is your gender? It's not a difficult question. So the way to answer to this question is, if you are male, please press 1, the key 1, on your Digivoting card. And if you are female, please press 2.
Yes, please go.
Go.
You can press the keys now. It is working. I just want to let you know, if you make a mistake, for instance, if you press a key that's not a possible answer, say you press 5. 5 is not a possible answer. The only possible answers to this question are 1 and 2. So if you press 5, nothing will happen, and you can vote again and press the right key. However, if you make a mistake and you're a female and you press 1, I'm sorry, but there's no way we can correct this. So please make sure before you vote, and I mean, I'm talking in a general way because this question is easy, but other questions you might hesitate more. Please make sure you press the right key.
Draw their attention
How many
to
we have?
responses.
Okay. We have 104 people who have voted. We'll wait 3 more seconds for additional people to vote if they haven't voted. So please, if you haven't answered the question, do it now. And then we'll close the question and look at the results.
Yeah, but it's really small.
Okay, so we'll close the question now. Okay, so in this room we have 64% male and 36% women. Do you have questions on how to use the Digivoting equipment? Yes?
No, just if you press twice, does it count twice or it neutralized?
No, you will never have 2 answers registered. It's 1 answer per card. So even if you press 1 3 times, it will only register 1 male. What? But please do not press too many times. It's not doing anything. And are there other questions? Okay, so we'll move to the next question. The second question is, which category best describes your main field of expertise? You can only pick, yeah, thanks. You can, it's also written there, and it's probably more legible there on that screen. The font is bigger. You can only pick one answer, so please pick the field of expertise that corresponds most to your background. So please press 1 for agronomy. Agronomy in its broader sense, including soil science, crop science, entomology. Press 2 for hydrology, broader sense, water management. 3 for nutrition. 4 for health. 5 for engineering. 6 for economics. 7 for other social sciences, and 8 for anything else that's not listed above. You can vote now. I think we're done, right? Okay, we're going to close. What? It is what? Okay, we have 106 people who voted to this question. That's great. So we're going to close it and look at the results. Okay, so lots of people have studied economics in this room. 13% for agronomy. Lots of others, 9% of others. And the rest is pretty balanced between the other fields.
How about you can vote 10 times?
Okay, so I think you're becoming familiar with this Digivoting system. I think everybody has understood how it works. We're going to move to the third question. Okay, the third question is, what type of organization do you belong to? Press 1 for university, 2 for national research institution, other than a university. Press 3 for international research institution, CGIAR center or non-CGIAR center. Vote now.
Regional should be international, I think, right? Regional.
Regional?
Make that international if you don't mind.
Where's their regional?
No, he's asking what he should. He's in a regional organization.
Yeah, international, is that what you said? Regional organizations for this question equals international. So please press 4. Okay, so the majority of people work for international organizations, non-research. We have 22 coming from university, 18 from international research institutions. Okay, we're going to move to the last question for this step 0. The last question is, what region do you work on most? So there are 9 possibilities, and like previously, you can only give one answer. So key 1 is for Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Mauritania. Key 2 for Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, West Bank, and Gaza. 3 for Somalia, Djibouti, Comoros, Yemen, Egypt, and Sudan. 4 for Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. 5 for Turkey and Iran. 6 for Sub-Saharan Africa. 7 for Asia. 8 for Latin America and the Caribbean, and 9 for any other countries.
Categories. Questions here. Yeah.
Other. Can you use the microphone, please?
We are working in the all Arab countries. So no relevant category in this.
So,
Others mean other countries.
yes, would
So
you...
we are working with those 1, 2, 3, 4.
So maybe we could say that 9 equals all countries. Would that be better? Okay, so please use...
All Arab countries. Because this conference for Arab countries.
Okay, well, if you're working on all Arabic countries, I suggest you press other, and we will take this into account.
What about international?
Others, that's the only way that we can do this.
Sorry, other is irrelevant. Others, other countries like
Okay, so what we can do is we're going to vote again. We're going to close this question and ask the question again with 9 meaning all other countries. Arabic countries, sorry. All Arabic countries, okay? But we must first close this question. Okay, so do we close this question now? And then we open it again, and 9 means all Arabic countries.
Can you say that? Is there any way to say that too, Dan, please?
Okay, so we'll please ask you to vote again. We have changed the significance of the key number 9. So 9 means all Arabic countries. Where?
And Iran and Turkey, yes. Plus Iran.
Okay, we're not going to start it.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, can you please vote now? We still need a few people to vote, please, and then we'll close this question and move over to step 1. Even if you voted before, please vote to this question because we've changed it. Almost. We need a few more people and then we'll close the question. Okay, we'll close the question. Thank you. Almost, but for timing issues, I don't think we can wait more. Okay, so we definitely needed to change the key number 9. Yes, number 3 has. Can you read that? 28%.
3 is 19%.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move over to step number 2. Step number 1, sorry. So in this step, you will assign weights in percent to the 4 objectives. Can you put up step 1? So as a reminder, these 4 objectives are reduce rural poverty, increase food security, nutrition and health, improve sustainability of natural resources, and enhance opportunities for women. So what we are asking you to do is to tell us, in this region, according to you, which is the relative importance of these 4 objectives. It's important that the 4 weights that you choose for these 4 objectives add up to 100%, which is why we have provided you with a handout in your CRP2 folder. This handout is called handout number 2. It looks like this. And it's in the first handout in your CRP2 folder. For each objective, you have a choice between 0% and 60%, and you can choose one of these values for each of the 4 objectives. You cannot use other percentages. For instance, you cannot use 5% or 23%. So at this time, please take a few minutes to fill in the first column of your handout number 2 and assign the weights that you would like to assign to each of the 4 objectives. Can you put the objectives? No, the objectives.
Before they press.
No, it's on yours. I don't think so, it's on yours. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so you have the 4 objectives showing up on the screen. And so please assign a percentage to each of them on your paper. later, first I want them to choose the percentages, and then I'll tell them which key corresponds to it. Once you are done with this, you can fill in the second column of the handout. And this second column is for writing down the key on the Digivoting card that corresponds to each of the weights. So you can see on this screen which key corresponds to which percentage. So with this correspondence, you can fill in the second column. So key 1 means 10%, 2 means 20%, 3 means 30%, 4 means 40, 5 means 40, 50, sorry, and 6 means 60, and 7 means 0. So 7 doesn't mean 70, it means 0.
On paper.
You should do this on your handout, in the second column of your handout. And then we will use the Digivoting cards, but we want you to be preparing your votes on paper so that the Digivoting goes easier after that. Sure.
Yeah.
Should we move on? Okay, so now we're going to vote using the Digivoting cards. And this should be easy because you already know what key you should press. So the first slide is the vote on the weights for the objective Reduce Rural Poverty. So please enter the key that corresponds to the weight, to the percentage that you want to assign to this objective Reduce Rural Poverty. Still need a few people. Okay, I'm going to close in two seconds. Please, the last people, can you vote on this question? Okay, we have almost everybody. We're going to close this question. Second question about the second objective, which is increase food security, nutrition, and health. Please assign the percentage for this objective. We're almost there. We need a few more people. Okay, we're going to close this question. Thank you. Moving over to the objective, improve sustainability of natural resources. Please do the same. Waiting for a few more people. Okay, moving over to the last question about the objective enhance opportunities for and participation of women. Still have a few seconds. Okay, we're going to close this question. And in just a few minutes, we're going to show you the result of your votes. So these results are going to be average weights for each of these 4 objectives. And we will use these average weights later in the priority setting process. We're going to need about 2 or 3 minutes to do this. So please bear with us for 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you. So what is very equal? What gender has 18. Okay, so here are the results of your votes for step 1. So the objective increased food security, nutrition and health has got 29% of the, an average weight of 29%. Very close behind is reduced rural poverty at 27%. Improved sustainability of natural resources, also very close at 26%. And enhanced opportunities for and participation of women has 18%. We're going to be using these average weights in the later steps of our process. Yeah. So now Mark Rosegrant will give a presentation about the 10 CRP2 sub-themes. And after this presentation, we will proceed to step 2 of the voting, in which you will assign scores to each of these sub-themes.
Thank you. What I want to do now is just give a little more flavor of the sub-themes so you have a little more feel for what some of the pieces are. There's quite a long presentation that you also all have in your folders called CRP2 Priority Study, as you can see there. So you can have that with you in the working groups, which we're going to go to in a moment. So I'll just touch through, I won't do an exhaustive work through of this presentation, but touch on some of the key activities under each of these sub-themes so you get a better flavor. And just say one more time that, again, this is, well, it's kind of a fun process, that it's also an important process, that this really is going to feed into the allocation of funding and the specific things that will be funding in this region. So it's great that you all are getting into this very well. So again, you've seen this slide already, so I don't have to go through there. So let me go through the sub-themes. So the first one, again, this is on foresight and strategic scenarios. So this is idea here is to look at what's happening in the long term. So looking at what happens under, say, certain scenarios of productivity growth, what would be the long-term supply and demand balances, what are the key drivers for that productivity growth, and looking then at the rate of return to research versus long-term investment in rural roads. So here we would look at designing scenarios that look at emerging challenges, like what happens under different climate change scenarios or different water scarcity scenarios. Then looking at modeling the consequences of these scenarios for the region and for the world because of the interlinkages with food prices and so forth. And then use that to assess policies and investment allocations. So for example, do we invest more in rural roads in a given country or in agriculture research or in irrigation? That's the second sub-theme, sub-theme 1.2 is on macroeconomic, trade, investment, and on non-agricultural policies. So how does policies on exchange rates, policies on the non-agriculture sector influence the contribution of agriculture to food security? So for example, here we would look at both how international policies affect the countries or regions, and also looking at issues such as we've had a major emphasis here on foreign direct investment. That would be looked at here, and in improving, together with the strategic foresight scenario, to improve allocation, sequencing, and efficiency of public investments. Production and technology policies, again, here is they're really focusing on agriculture policies on the technology side to identify technologies that are, and policies that are enable pro-poor, gender equitable, and sustainable growth in agriculture productivity. So here we would look at the role of both the public and private sector, and what are the farm-level responses and consequences of policies such as how to improve access to improved crops, animals, and aquaculture and fisheries, policies for increasing productivity given land, water, and energy scarcity, so look at that nexus of policies. Then looking at how issues like intellectual property rights and other policies for technological development can help induce more rapid adoption by small farmers and small producers. Then moving on forward to subtheme 1.4, this is really hitting then the social protection policies. Obviously, no matter how good we get the macro policies or the technology policies, some people are going to get left behind. So this theme then is going to emphasize on how do you best design social protection policies to target beneficiaries, and looking at what is the distribution of benefits under different kinds of modalities for social protection, and then the impact on food security, poverty, and assets. We'll also look at how, by putting in appropriate social protection policies, can that, for example, then reduce risk enough so that farmers or other producers would be willing to more rapidly adopt risky agriculture innovations. Then moving on to theme point 2, here we're again skipping down to the activities level of policy processes, looking at specifically at on the politics of supporting small farmers and women in agriculture and natural resource management, analysis of political participation and the linkages between research and policy, and then very importantly the assessment of community and local government political processes and how that influences agriculture growth and the distribution of benefits and reduction in food security. And here, this is a very important one that we also heard a lot about here is, okay, once we have the research, to support a given set of policies, how do you get it out? So this aspect would actually look at the political feasibility of reforms and implementation as well. This has also an important role with IFPRI's country strategy, support programs, and our other in-country efforts as well. Subtheme 3.2.2 on governance of rural services. Again, this follows on from 2.1, but then looks at public sector reform strategies and what is the appropriate level of political, fiscal, and administrative decentralization, identify innovative management approaches for the public sector, and look at how empowerment of communities or farmers can affect the adoption of reforms. Collective action and property rights. Again, this property rights is another one that was mentioned very specifically throughout this. And here we look at how do you understand the appropriate policies to strengthen property rights, and with some particular emphasis on marginalized groups, so that they have a better stake in the system. Examining the interactions between property rights and productivity and sustainability, and research on collective action, so farmer cooperatives, for example, that would empower small-scale producers. Moving on then to 2.4, institutions to strengthen the assets of the poor, and again, activities including really a much better understanding of the assets of the rural poor and rural smallholders, and the role of how the differential role of assets for men and women in terms of livelihoods and pathways out of poverty. Is there a difference depending on who holds and makes decisions on the assets in the household? Also understanding risk management, insurance, and evaluating programs and policies that look directly at strengthening the assets of the poor. Theme 3, is where, again, we look in detail at value chains, and that includes addressing what is the degree of concentration of input markets and output markets for that matter, and is that influencing marketing processes and potentials for small farmers. Heard a number of interventions here the last couple of days on how the middlemen are getting a lot of the profits out of the system here. To what extent does that hold, and what policies can be designed to get a greater share of value to the farmers? Also reducing transaction costs, getting marketing costs and margins down, and again, looking at how collective action and social capital, linking back to the social asset component, can help enhance innovations in the value chains in order to reduce market risk. So, the theme 3.2 really is to look at how do you developing a broader strategy and framework for the impact of interventions across the value chains, across all the CGR centers. So here we would look at working with our collaborators from the other centers and national partners to look at cost-effective methods for measuring the impact of interventions designed to upgrade value chains, and actually implementing and pilot testing, and then doing informal impact assessments of those kinds of changes. So that's a broad look at the sub-themes. Does anybody have any questions now regarding the sort of composition of the program? After this, Pascal will explain in more detail about how we're going to split into working groups to look at how each of these sub-themes can contribute to the individual objectives. Any need for clarification at this point, or questions? No? Okay, I guess we're getting to you. All right. And again, bring your folder with these things when you go to the working groups. I think, Pascal, you're going to brief them a little bit more now? Yeah.
So, as Mark just said, after the break, we will break up into groups, 4 different groups. And this session into groups will last for about 50 minutes. During this session, you will be asked to assign scores between 1 and 5 to the CRP2 sub-themes based on their contribution to the 4 objectives. So there will be 4 groups, and each group will work on one of the 4 objectives. So I think by now you remember what the 4 objectives was, but I'm going to remind you once again so that you can choose which group you want to be part of. The first group will work on the objective reduce rural poverty. Group 2 will work on the objective increase food security, nutrition and health. Group 3 will work on the objective improve sustainability of natural resources. And Group 4 will work on the objective enhance opportunities for and participation of women. We are going to ask you which group you would like to be placed in based on your expertise. And we're going to do this using the Digivoting so that we will know directly how many people chose which group. And if the group sizes are not compatible with the room settings, we will have to ask some of you if they're willing to move from one group to another group. So Group 1 and Group 3 will go to the mezzanine room, which is located upstairs. Group 2, I'm sorry, there's been an error on this slide. Group 2 will actually stay in the plenary room. So Group 2 working on increasing food security, nutrition and health will stay in this room. And Group 4 working on the objective about gender equality will go to the committee room 1, which is located on this floor to the right. So now we'll ask you which group you would like to be placed in for this session. So please based on your expertise, please let us know which group you would like to be placed in. Press 1 for the objective reduce rural poverty, and this is going to be group 1. Press 2 for the objective increase food security, nutrition and health. Press 3 if you would like to work on the objective improve sustainability of natural resources. And please press 4 if you would like to be in the group that's going to be working on increasing opportunities for women. This is the objective that you will be working on during the breakout groups. It's very important that everybody votes on this question. If you want to be working in a group, we need you to know which group you would like to be placed in. What?
That's it.
Some people what? Yeah, well, they...
So they can come in wherever they come in. So, okay, we have to vote.
Okay, so let's look at the group distribution. Okay, so right now we have 18 people in group 1, 34 in group 2, 27 in group 3, and only 10 people in group 4.
It's a disgrace.
What? Okay, so it's fine. We don't have to ask you to change groups. These are fine. And the people who stepped aside of the room, they will be able to join the group that they want to join, because I think there will be room for people in each of these groups. And preferably, if some people could join the group working on gender, that would also be good for the group sizes. So please, before you take your break, I need 5 more minutes of your attention. Group 1 and 3, after the break, go directly to the mezzanine room. There are 2 ways to go to this room. Either you take the elevators and go to the MZ level, and you will see signs to direct you to this room. Or you go through this door and up the stairs, and there will be signs as well. Group 2 stays in plenary room. We will move the chairs to make small groups so that people can discuss. So please do not leave your folders in this room if you're not in group 2. You need to take the folders with you to the rooms that you're going, because you will need these folders, and also because other people might be occupying your seats when you come back, because they will have stayed in group 2. And group 4 goes to committee room B1, which is on this level to the right. And you can keep your Digivoting cards around your neck, but you won't be using them in the groups. There will be no Digivoting in the small groups. So either keep them around your neck or leave them on the table, but you will not be needing them for the small groups. And the instructions about what to do, the assignment of this group, will be provided by the group managers. We hope that you enjoyed the breakup groups. And now we're gathered here for the last step of the voting, which is step 3. Some people have asked us how we will take into account the results of the breakup group session. Since you didn't vote with your Digivoting cards, you only voted on paper. So we have collected all the handouts, and if someone has not given to us his or her handout, please give it to either me or Perry-Han or Olivier or Jean-François before you leave, because this is how we will get the results of step 2. And we will enter this in the computer, and we will get the results after the meeting. The results for step 2 cannot be shown immediately, because you're not going to vote on this step 2 using the Digivoting cards. So now we'll have a last round of voting, and this one will use Digivoting again. So please have your Digivoting cards handy. This step, we ask you to take a broader view on the CRP2 subthemes. So contrary to step 2, in which you have focused on the contribution of these subthemes to one objective, for step 3, we ask you to assign a score that represents the overall contribution of the subthemes to the 4 objectives. So that's the major difference between step 2 and step 3. Now you'll be assigning scores to the subthemes based on their overall contribution to the 4 objectives. The values, the possible values for the scores are the same as in step 2. So 1 means very low overall contribution. 2 means rather low overall contribution, again to the overall 4 objectives. 3 means medium contribution. 4 means rather high contribution, and 5 means very high contribution. And again, these are the same values that you've been using in step 2. Like for step 2, please try to differentiate the scores that you assign to the different subthemes, because the aim of this exercise is to prioritize certain subthemes over the others. So please try to differentiate the scores that you assign to the 10 subthemes. The last handout in your folder is called Handout 5, and it has a title Step 3. And this is the handout that you should be using now to prepare your votes before we vote with the Digivoting cards.
Question? Yeah.
Can you, again, we've already scored, but you want us an individual score. Can you explain a little bit how the difference, that step 3 will differ from the step 2, because I got confused a little bit.
Yes. So the main difference between step 2 that you guys did in the subgroups and step 3 that we're doing now is that in step 2, each of you focused on only one objective. So for instance, group 1 was working on the objective reduce rural poverty. So the scores that the people in group 1 assigned to the 10 subthemes reflected the contribution of these subthemes to reducing rural poverty. Okay? In step 3, what we ask from you is an overall score that reflects the overall contribution of each subtheme globally to the 4 objectives. So not only one objective, but to the 4 objectives overall. That's the difference. Is this clear? Are there any other questions before we proceed to the voting? Okay, so please use the handout that's called handout number 5, step 3, to prepare the scores that you're going to assign to the 10 subthemes. I will leave you a few minutes to do this. Are we ready after that? Are we ready after that? We'll leave you 1 more minute and then we'll ask you to vote. Okay, now we're going to proceed to the voting. So I'm going to show you 10 successive slides. Each slide is for one subtheme. And for each slide, I will ask you to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, which is the score that you're assigning overall to this subtheme. So we'll start with subtheme 1.1, which is foresight and strategic scenarios. Please assign a score between 1 and 5 to this subtheme. Okay, 2 more seconds and then we are moved to the second subtheme. Okay, we'll move to subtheme 1.2, which is macroeconomic, trade, and investment policies. Please vote for this subtheme. Okay, I think that's it. You're doing really well. We have 8 more subthemes to go. So the next subtheme is subtheme 1.3, production and technology policies. Please vote for this subtheme. Okay, moving along to the subtheme 1.4, social protection policies. Please enter your score between 1 and 5 for this subtheme. Okay, we'll move now to subtheme 2.1, policy processes. Thank you. You have voted for half of the subthemes. We still have 5 more to go, and the next one is subtheme 2.2, governance of rural services. Good, we're getting quicker at this. Now please vote on subtheme 2.3, collective action and property rights. Thank you. We're moving to subtheme 2.4. Institutions to strengthen the assets of the poor. Thank you. We're moving along to the 2 last subthemes, starting with 3.1, innovations across the value chains. Thank you. And the last subtheme is subtheme 3.2, impact of upgrading value chains. Okay, you can close that. Thank you very much for your participation. This was the last step of the Digivoting, and in a few minutes we will show you the results of step 3. And I think this will give us a good idea of the relative importance that the people in this room place on the different sub-themes. And this will also give us a good starting point for a discussion that we're going to have to conclude this session. While we're compiling the results, I also wanted to thank Katala Taylor, who has handled the Digivoting software, and this is not very easy, so that's thanks to her. Also, I would like to use this time to please ask you at the end of the day to not bring the Digivoting cards back home with you, but just I'd like to remind you to please place these cards in one of the boxes that are located at the 2 main exits of this room. Thank you.
But while we're waiting, it would be great if people would give us any feedback on how to make this work better. Were there any parts that you felt didn't work so well? I was very impressed with the discussions in the groups as I was going around, so I felt that was certainly extremely valuable. Yes?
I would suggest that we could have shared the outcome of exercise 2 before we go into exercise 3. Because each one of us is focused on the outcome of his group, and he will be hideous in maybe assigning new scores to an overall, because we're just coming out of a brainstorming session on the specifics of our group. It would have been interesting to get the results of 2 maybe, and then discuss a little bit and then vote in the last phase.
Yeah, I think it's basically a logistical problem that there's no way it would have taken a few hours to do those up. And to some extent, I think that might bias your results too. In the sense we wanted your fresh take, but I do understand that you didn't have a chance to consider across all the different objectives in here. So you're right; it's a little bit of a different, yeah.
Continuing the exercise is very important. We don't always have to conclude in this session. We could think it over and maybe vote later on. This is what is important for a long-term affiliation on this exercise.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Yeah, that kind of follow-up process would be really great. That's a good idea. And these will be posted. You know, the exercise 2 will also be posted on the website fairly soon, and then we could perhaps do that kind of exercise. Of course, you know, anybody's also welcome to use these in you know, thinking through your own research programs, your own strategies here in the region. It's not just for CRP2, because this does have the consensus of a very high level and quite diverse group here, which I think is great for all of us. Yeah, oh, sorry. There. Yes, ma'am.
When we broke up into groups, I felt that we also needed to know who are the members, because, for example, everybody was speaking from a different angle, like, are the projects going to be in Egypt? Are they going to be in Yemen, in Tunisia, or whatever? So we simply also needed to know who have been the members who have also opted for these, or based on what, like the background information that you collected at the beginning. I think it should also be done for the groups.
Yes, a couple of suggestions that you may want to consider in future in managing this kind of program. One, in choosing the groups for the group discussions, maybe should have been done at random rather than making people from different disciplines go to have opinions on, I'm an economist, I could have opinions on health and vice versa. That's one suggestion. The other suggestions, as maybe you could also consider doing the same voting online, whether on Twitter or on your Facebook page or whatever, also to see a wider audience how they feel about these priorities.
Thank you very much. Those are good suggestions. We actually had considered the randomization and didn't know how people would feel if they got randomized into a group that they don't know anything about. So, but I could see the value of what you're suggesting as well. Thank you. Anything else?
So we'll show you the results of step 3, and then we can have some more questions and discussions. Okay, so these are the average scores for each of the 10 sub-themes. And on this screen here, you have a reminder on what each sub-theme number is. So the sub-theme that has the highest average score of 3.9 is sub-theme 1.4 about social protection policies, followed very, very closely by sub-theme 1.3 about technology and production policies, and sub-theme 2.4, which is institutions to strengthen the assets of the poor. The sub-theme that people ranked lower is sub-theme 3.2 about impact evaluation of value chains interventions. But overall, each of the sub-themes you thought was important. There's not one sub-theme that has a very, very low score. They're pretty evenly distributed. Do you want to make the name?
Yeah, just maybe it'll be interesting that, as you requested the group scores. I would predict that there'll be greater differentiation by the individual groups than here, because this tends to wash it out, I think, rather than in the careful way that you did it now. But yeah.
As an industrialist, I scored very high on 3.2 because one of the value chains, one of my biggest problems is supply chains and long supply chains. And until we have good technologies or good products that can sustain trade across the region or internationally, we will never be able to really access markets. So the dialogue could have been instrumental in addressing why this or that for the larger group. But this is a hedonist group because it's controlled by economists. And economists are not aware of what is on the ground. So we need to communicate, I think.
Any other comments? Yes, here.
This is an exercise of something that had already been made. I mean, we didn't make up that list. And yet we had a workshop where we heard things that went, I think, beyond that list. Now, I mean, the effort of making this workshop and having speakers who brought in new ideas and advanced ideas that relate to the problems of the region, they're not reflected in these priorities. So how the outcome, I would have said that the final outcome of your analysis would be to add what the presentations brought that is new to the meeting, because the presentations reflected things that are happening in the region. And yet you gave us no choice. You gave us a choice of your selected list. I don't know how the people feel about this, but I have issues that health and nutrition is not at all represented here, while you put the title health and nutrition. The other thing is that the nutrition problems now in the whole world and the global epidemic of non-communicable diseases and obesity go and focus, like Marie Ruel said at the presentation of the World Bank, in the early childhood period. And yet in all food security, there is no attention to that period, while it is the root of the epidemic that the world...
Description of all of them to see how it fits, so that would help. But I agree that we should go back to some of the presentations here, and they'll certainly be brought together with our colleagues here. The other issue that came up, and that I agree that we should have done, is have a column on gaps or things that we've missed in the working groups, and had you fill those in too. And so that one was an error that we'll correct in the future. So I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you. Mahmoud.
Confirm what you said. This is the really specialized CRP, because there are other CRPs that are handling those issues. And I think that's why people may think that there are certain things that are missing here. Probably putting all the 15 CGIAR research programs, I agree with you fully, but there is a need to sort of put some gap areas that are very relevant to the topic of this particular CRP if they exist. But your points are very well taken. I think CRP 4, if I'm not mistaken, on agriculture and the nutrition, even the whole issue of neurotoxins in plants and so forth, we have, for example, Lathrus, favism, vicine. I mean, the whole issue related to nutrition is a big area there. This is what I wanted to say. So I think it's worth really probably, I mean, sending an email on this probably. Okay. So web page of the CGIAR, you'll find the details. Yeah.
Can you report the standard deviations of those answers?
Right now,
Not right now, but we can definitely.
Yes.
Okay, I think the sub-themes are too many. So this is why, I mean, you find everyone is very closely related to the others. The sub-themes are too many. 10 sub-themes are too many. This is why you find everyone is very closely to the others. This is why you have them evenly distributed. If you have 5, you will find high differentiation, maybe.
I think time will not allow for this, but I would suggest that later every one of us should vote on the other objective. That's what we do in the groups. Every group wrote their scoring on one objective. I think it's fair because they have different background. So I think it is better or fair enough that everyone vote on the four groups rather than just one. You could do it online, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah, it would have to be done not in this meeting because we have time constraints. But yes, ideally everybody would have voted on each objectives, but it would have been difficult in a practical way. But we keep the idea of doing part of this exercise online.
Statistically speaking, these columns are similar. So either we can consider that all of them are priorities for us, and so we cannot make selective subtitles in order to intervene later more deeply, or we should really re-rank them again in order to make priorities among these priorities, because the results are similar at all the levels.
Thank you. I'll be very interested to see if that holds up in the individual groups, which I think might actually have a wider spread in them, but that remains to be seen.
I think I'm referring to the same point, that the deviations between this finding and the other group 2 findings is what's important to understand.
Yeah, we'll be doing that analysis. Thank you. Yep. Any other final points? I think we're about ready for the wrap-up session. So, one last here. Yeah.
How do you plan to allocate funds here among all these? I mean, how many are you going to select really for funding? How's it going to have? What's the process?
So, I mean, there will be funding for probably all of the sub-themes, but how much goes to that we'll take into account the results from this region and the other regions as well. And then there's a management team, but also a scientific advisory team that's going to take those into account as well in doing final allocations. And at some point next year, there's likely to be a call for proposals around some of these areas as well. That will be a little bit down the line because we're just starting up now, but that will occur.
Can you correlate individual answers? Like, for example, those male, female, the background information you asked for, and then see the type of answers we had? That's why we did those. That's one of the reasons to do those questions. We didn't want to have individual because it wouldn't be fair for individuals to be revealed as to what they, but those groups we can use to also to disaggregate the results. Yep. Okay, thanks. So I guess we're ready for the final session. Schengen and who else? Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. That was that worked really great. We weren't sure how well it would go along. It went, I think, better than any expectations. As we said, this is the first time to do it, and you got us off to a great start. Thank you very much.